Next thing on the list is going to be this guy.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another Hellbound Garage. As you can tell, we're in my office, not in the garage. And that's because I didn't have a proper introduction for this video. This video was originally supposed to be part of another set of videos, and it turned out to be long enough that I just decided to make its own video. It didn't flow well with the other stuff. So anyways, we're going to hop right into me showing you my dash, and then we'll get right into it. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, oof, that looks rough, well, you'd be correct. This is the original dash out of my 280Z, and as I've said previously, my 280Z has spent most of its life in Arizona, including all the 120 degree plus summers where the sun is beating through the window, absolutely baking this dash. And as we all know, heat is plastic's worst enemy, so over time, it's done nothing but crack this dash. Now, it looks like it's not all that bad. If some of you are like, oh, just put it back in the car, that is because at one point, halfway through my ownership, I tried to sit there and repair all of the cracks that were actually in this that you don't really see on camera because it's dark enough in here. Back when I originally tried to repair the dash, the spray foam that you see a lot of guys using to like build body kits and things like that, that used to be really popular to fill in large cracks within these dashes. And then there's some other materials that you would put on top of it to seal it off. And it didn't work very well. And as I go through and try and correctly repair this time, you'll see where all the original cracks are in this. So that's what's going to happen today, is I'm going to fix the cracks that have popped back up since those repairs, as well as try and repair my repairs. We'll see how it goes. Absolute worst case scenario, if it absolutely flops, I can get a full dash cap. They make complete ones that cover the entire deal, but it's kind of cheesy, and I would rather try and fix this the quote-unquote correct way before resorting to a dash cap, even though I'm going to spend just as much on the repair materials as I would just be getting a cap. The first thing I need to do with this dash is get these gauges and this wiring out. These 3 gauges here, as well as the stock speedometer, will be pretty easy to get out. The tack and the fuel gauge that I put in here are going to be a different story. If you notice on the back side here, because they don't actually have brackets, I silicone these into the dash, which at the time was good. I didn't think I was going to have to ever remove these again, but now that I do, these are going to suck to get out. And if you're questioning why they don't have brackets, well, one, the fuel gauge is sitting in a heating vent, and 2, the tack, when I put this in this dash all those years ago, there was no brackets, aftermarket brackets for gauges for these cars. You had to modify what was already there in order to get the gauges to fit. So I'll show you that, but first, let me get all these gauges out.
Later that same evening.
Alright, so I got all the gauges out, all the wiring out. It definitely took a little bit of elbow grease to get all of this stuff out. Ended up using a knife and a pair of pliers to cut it away from the dash, and then use the pliers to pull it away. Luckily, when I installed these gauges with the silicone, I didn't pack the silicone into the creases. I just had it on the back side, which thankfully made this job way easier. It still was tough, but not that bad. And honestly, I'll probably end up using silicone to put them back in, which kind of sucks because they still don't make a bracket for this stuff. and I don't feel like fabbing up one. Anyways, let me try and get you a better image or point out a bunch of the imperfections in this dash, and then we'll talk about what the next step is. With a little more light, you can kind of see here. So this is one of those repairs I tried to do in the past. This is a huge one that I tried to do in the past. Here's another that kind of spidered and is actually started a new one right in there. I tried to patch this one, and this one has come back. I got another one here. A new one is started in here, but it's a hairline. There you go. Another one there and there. So I am going to take probably a Dremel and a sanding disc and rough up the entire surface, one, because I'm going to need a surface to adhere to, and two, I want to dig away a bunch of this old stuff that I tried to do before, as well as I want to get good grooves to fill in the new cracks that have formed. Now it's going to be on to the next step of the process, and admittedly I have already actually done this step, but I want to go over the products that I use for any beginners out there that might be looking at this, because I myself am still a beginner. I'm going off of recommendations more than anything else as I'm doing all this and learning. The people that I know that know how to do this stuff are hours away, so I kind of just have to do this on my own. Now, with that being said, there are a few different ways that people have gone about doing this, but after looking at results, after tinkering around with my stuff already, the way that I'm going about it seems to be probably the strongest way of doing it. So, first things first is filler. Another name for it is Bondo, but Bondo is a brand where filler is the general term. The stuff that I use is this Rage Ultra stuff. It's the stuff the Body Shop got me to buy. I guess it is the best stuff on the market, but I'm not that good. So using a product that is this good versus my skills hasn't been the greatest thing in the world. I'd probably, if I was just a beginner, stick to like Bondo brand stuff because it's cheaper compared to this stuff, and that way if you make a bunch of mistakes, it's not going to cost you as much. Anywho, before this step in the process, I did use my Dremel with a cutoff wheel. I'm not sure if you can see that, and this little itty bitty bit. Once again, not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but I use these two items to widen the cracks in the dash, as well as give them a V taper. That way you can get as much stuff in there and hopefully get enough binding. In my case, some areas that didn't work, I'll show you. After using the Dremel, I did go through with a sander and sand everything down. It is per instruction. After sanding it down, I did wipe everything down just like you're supposed to do on every prep stage, and from there we then started mixing up the filler and taking care of the dash. Now this to me is the absolute hardest thing in the world to figure out. I've done multiple projects now and I still cannot figure out the hardener to filler ratio. Sometimes I can get it right and it gives me enough work time. Other times I got like a minute worth of work time with this stuff because I mess up how much hardener is supposed to go in there. Once again, if I was better at this, then this would be no problem and people are probably laughing at me in the comments. But anyways, filler itself, after you figure out the hardener mixture, is relatively easy. If you want to do things on the cheap, which is okay. I've now done this enough that this is no longer what I feel like I need to do. I need to go out and get an actual board. But this is simply a clipboard with wax paper on it, and the filler actually comes right off of it. Wax paper does not soak in any of the moisture from the filler, so it allows the filler to harden the correct way instead of like cardboard. Cardboard sucks the moisture out of fiberglass or out of filler, and it makes the work time far less. So wax paper and a clipboard with some duct tape, easy way of making yourself a mixing board. And then these little deals were all I got from Harbor Freight, and I clipped them in half and used those to fill the gaps. Unfortunately, Datsun dashes are not very flat anywhere on them, especially ones that have been warped for 45 years in the sun. So using the small fill or the small spatula or whatever you want to call them, was beneficial in the process. But let me show you what I actually got done. Do have to say, if you are of any kind of height, this workbench, this Husky workbench, absolutely golden. If you've got the coin for it, it's on wheels, so you can float it everywhere. It's got a manual adjuster, so you can raise and lower it. So if you're a tall guy like me, you don't mess up your back. Anyways, this is what I got going on. Don't mind all that. This is what I got going on. This is where I've decided to stop. As you can see, a bunch of work has been done, and obviously this dash is not flat. But you know, there are areas you can kind of see. There's a crack in here. This whole thing is kind of wavy. I've tried, as you can see, the different layers. I've tried to smooth it out a little bit. It's way better than what it was, but you know, you still got things like that, areas like this, all big chunks that were missing essentially because they were cracked away. Any of the stuff here. Now, the reason I've decided to stop is this is a flexible surface. There is no hard, it's all soft and flexible. So Bondo naturally wants to crack away from everything. Not sure if you're going to be able to tell. Probably not. There. You see that? The Bondo here, or the filler I should say, has cracked away from this. And that's because there was nothing here. This was a solid gap all the way through. So at least now I have a shape to this. I've got a flat surface. Kind of how this area was. These gauges cracked really bad. And that's where I've decided to stop using filler. I see a lot of people stopping at the stage and then covering it, coating it, whatever, and being done with it. Sorry, I've got a bunch of stuff on the floor. And this is a perfect case of why you don't do this. I would definitely recommend fiberglass filler if you're going, or fiberglass reinforced filler, if you're going to do it the simple, easy way and just coating it like this and calling it done. Because regular Bondo or regular filler will not work. For me, that's okay, because I'm going to go one step farther, considering I have repaired this dash once before. This is my second repair. After this, I'm probably just going to end up getting a whole new dash if it cracks again. But to try and avoid that, we are taking it one step farther, and we are going to be using fiberglass. Yay. Now I am completely brand new at fiberglass. I've never touched fiberglass before. So just like everything else, I read the instructions on the back of the fiberglass, as well as I watched YouTube on some tips and tricks for fiberglass. So yeah, I've got my fiberglass resin and the hardener. I've got fiberglass mat, and I grabbed fiberglass cloth, as well as I got these tools off of Amazon. They're to help get air bubbles out of the fiberglass and resin. Not sure if I'm actually going to be using them or not, but I have them just in case. And then I've got my mixing containers and chip brushes, because these are a one and done thing when it comes to using the fiberglass resin. So, and got gloves, and I'll have face protection on. So that's where I'm at. You're caught up. And let's get started with this whole thing. Alright, so at this point I'm officially done with the first coat, I think. I'm not sure. I don't want this to be super thick. The fiberglass is pretty much to just reinforce the overall structure. That way it doesn't crack again. So we'll see if I need to lay a second layer of fiberglass. I really don't want to. I was reading a few things and they said that if you get wavy and stuff as you start to sand down, instead of using Bondo or anything like that, just apply another layer of the resin, and that will take up the gaps and kind of smooth everything out, because it is a much more workable or fillable fluid application over body filler. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna let this dry. They say it needs like 2 hours. Whatever you do after you're done, do not touch anything without gloves on, because everything is sticky. So yeah, I will see you in a couple hours. I have officially got the first layer of fiberglass down, and I have it all sanded. I've got it pretty smooth, but you can definitely tell there are plenty of areas. Unfortunately, this is how fiberglass is. And I was only going to do one coat, but I think I'm going to lay down a second coat of fiberglass just along the top here, just to kind of reinforce all the warpage and the big cracks. Like, now that the fiberglass is all cleaned up, you can definitely see where the big areas were that I had to fight with. I mean, there was quite a few of them, and the overall just waviness of this, it's much better now. You will see a few little pockets here that I kind of dug out. Even with stamping the brush, I ended up with a couple of spots. Considering this is my first time doing this, not bad. But I think I'm going to reinforce this top side just to make it last a little longer. I did want to mention on the front side here, I didn't go all the way down the dash, and because a lot of this stuff doesn't see the same amount of sun and whatnot, I know I sanded some of these areas, but I think I'm going to leave them. But you can see kind of where I left off. I literally did halfway down the dash. My main concern was the top of the gauge pods, and especially this one spot right here. In the next step, I will be like feathering out those spaces and getting this stuff really flat. So I'm gonna lay down the second layer and let it cure and get it sanded, and then I'll jump back into the video.
Many hours later.
So now I have the second layer of fiberglass and resin on. Here's a little better look. As you can see, there's still plenty of surfaces that are low spots. And that's okay, because the next step of this process is going to flatten a lot of that out. A lot of people at this stage that I've seen, I've read about, they use just Bondo. They put Bondo right over the top of it, smooth it out, treat it just like any other body work. But like I've said, I'm not the greatest with filler or Bondo. What I did come across was this guy on YouTube, of all places, called Sprayway Customs, and he does a lot of things with box Chevys or older Chevy dash pads. Of course, they are very much square and flat, much easier to work with, but a product that he uses or he created or whatever he calls Rondo, and it is a mixture of fiberglass resin and body filler, and you can actually just paint it on with a paintbrush. You can get the consistency you want, the thickness you want, all before you put in the hardeners, so you can figure out exactly what you want, and then put in the hardeners and lay it down, and it goes down nice and flat. It self-levels itself, and it's wonderful, and I think that's what we're going to try at this stage. Now, unfortunately, I have a Datsun dash, which does not have a single flat surface on it. So I will have to do this in a couple of steps. As you can tell, I have my dash tied to my workbench and kind of jigged up so certain parts of it will stay flat. So I will target those areas, have to rotate the dash, and so on and so forth. So let me get you set up. We'll try and get the mixture, and then I'll go into a little bit of the application before finishing this. All right, so I didn't want to spend crazy amounts of money, and I didn't want to wreck my good stuff. So I picked up some Bondo body filler and another thing of the fiberglass resin. I didn't know how much I was honestly going to need, so I just picked up a bunch of it. So let's pop these guys open. Now, unlike other filler applications, because this is going in with something else, we're not really going to be that worried about air bubbles, because, well, it kind of does whatever it's going to do. So he just kind of plopped in his filler here. And then throw in his resin. And give him a little mixy mix. I don't know how well this is going to work. Mix, mix, mix. And I don't know if you can tell, it definitely has more of a liquid texture to it, which is what we are after. And I can keep on searching for that correct texture all I want, because I'm not putting either of the hardeners in here. So this is just kind of a feel as you go kind of deal, which is kind of cool. Throw on some gloves. Still hasn't set up or anything, because once again, doesn't have any of the hardeners or nothing like that. And when he got to this stage, he just kind of winged it. Oh, and I definitely did not mix that. Gosh darn it. Alright. Squeeze this up. You know, actually read the instructions when you're doing this. It's a little better. I don't know. I feel like that's gonna bite me in the butt. Got my all that good. Mix this up. Oh, that's a lot. So I've got the entire thing coated with what Spray Away Customs calls Rondo. So I'm now going to let this sit and cure up. I definitely, over here, when we first started, this stuff is definitely a different mixture because it's already starting to harden. Where this stuff over here, where I tried to adjust what I had put on the first spot, it's definitely not as much, so it's taking longer to cure, which is kind of what his stuff did. So I think I got it right. Anyways, I'm gonna let this sit until it dries, and then it's a lot of sand. And because nobody wants to watch sanding, I'm going to knock down all this stuff, get it super flat or super smooth, and I will come back after that.
72 hours later.
As you can tell back there, um, I've spent most of a day sanding this down. So let me show you what I got and where we're going from here. This is kind of the final product. You can see all the different highs and lows, but at this stage, it is really smooth, and I'm happy with it. After the Rondo dried, which I gotta mention, the Rondo didn't ever truly dry. I definitely didn't have enough hardeners in there. That's a very odd mixture. But I let it sit over an entire night before starting the sanding on it, and it was almost still a little sticky on the very surface, but as soon as you started hitting it with the sandpaper, it became the normal texture of body filler, and it just went to town. So to knock down everything, I hit the entire dash with 80 to get it close to the final, and then I went through with 150, and I smoothed out everything and just got it super smooth. There are a couple of little low spots, but for what I'm going to do, it's no problem. Now, if you were going to, say, paint this dash, from here I would, just spot filler or even just putty the remaining spots, and you'd be good to go. But I'm going to be doing something different. For you guys, it's been all of 2 minutes, but for me, it's been a week since I've actually touched my dash. I had a little bit of a snafu with the company that makes the final product for my dash, and I've had to wait. But in the meantime, because right now I can't waste time, I decided to work on something else that goes inside the dash. I made this. Pretty cool, right? No, this isn't something I bought off like Skillard or anything like that. I like his products, but for my particular application, I didn't think it would fit, especially with how I'm going to do the center console. So I went ahead and picked up a piece of aluminum from the metal shop. I think it was a cutoff from something else they did because it was sitting on their shop floor, and it was priced relatively cheap. It is thin, but because it's got the bend in it and everything else, it actually stiffened up pretty well. If you're curious on how I actually made it, well, it all started with CAD, cardboard aided design. I got the shape roughly where I wanted it with the bend and everything, because I have made previous versions, kind of like this one, and this one went all the way down to the bottom of the transmission tunnel. But because I want to handle this version a little differently, I cut it off at the dash. So I got my cardboard template all figured out with the bend and everything, and then I personally built this guy. Sorry about the mess. This guy right here. And that is a metal brake or a metal bend, whatever you want to call it, made of some angle iron. It cost me like $30 to make, and it does a relatively good job. If you haven't seen my videos on my fuel cell bulkhead build, I think they're on TikTok, go look at that. It kind of explains that tool better. And to get this angle right here, I actually used this guy with the cardboard template in place on the back side. I put this, and what it does is it shows you the angle of everything, so then you can replicate it on your benders. So the very first thing I did was I got my bend figured out, because if you mess up a bend or the bend's too radiused or anything like that, it'll completely throw off the measurements of everything else on this. So after I got the bend to where I wanted and fitting well, I then traced my cardboard template onto the metal and cut it out, made some holes, and well, this is the final product. And with all my other duties that I have going on in life, that is as far as I got. But the final product showed up today, or yesterday technically. So I am going to finally get the dash all finished. That way I can start reassembling it completely and getting it back in the car. So you're probably like, oh, what's this final product? What have you been waiting on? Well, this is what I've been waiting on. It's called Flockit. Essentially, it is this is just the adhesive. This is the actual product in here. And it's like suede fibers that you put the adhesive down on the dash, put the fibers in this thing, and shoot it all over the place. Now, I'm sure you've seen other videos, so in case this one doesn't go into as much depth, because this is probably starting to get to be a really long video, we're gonna just blast through it. Essentially, you roll down the adhesive, and then you shoot the stuff on, and it's pretty simple. Everything that I have read or have watched says that the work time on this stuff is pretty minimal, like 10 minutes, I guess. So I actually conned my dad into coming over to help me get this on. So I'm gonna get a time lapse set up, and we're just gonna go to town. We're gonna roll the adhesive on, shoot the stuff on, because we got very limited time. And it's warm outside today, so I'm sure that's going to affect it even more so than if it was a day in the fall. So let me get you guys set up, and let's get to this. So in the name of cleanup, I've moved stuff so I can get all this fiber stuff off my garage floor, but now this still has to dry for, I guess, 15 hours is what the container says. But this is what it looks like. Sorry, I'm a little sweaty. It's really warm in the garage right now, and I just finished bolting the dash back into the Datsun. So let me show you what the final product is. We'll start with the top. As most of you know, this is the metal piece for the Datsun for the defrost. But here is what it looks like overall. Pretty nice, right? Minus all the wiring. That does it. The dash is done. Thank you. Is a big thing off my list to get done. I do have to say that it didn't go as smoothly as I would have hoped, but if I did it again, I'd get better at it and better at it. just one of those things that would take practice, and because this is my first time, it wasn't bad. Still way better than what was there before, and I have enough material. I haven't mentioned this, but I ordered the 2 cans of adhesive and a big bag of the flock. I probably have enough adhesive and flock to do 2 or 3 more dashes. I was really surprised. So if you're a Datsun guy and you're careful, their small package of suede and adhesive, I think they call it a mini package, is enough to do a Datsun dash. Not sure about other dashes, but as far as the Datsun dash is concerned, as long as you're careful, the smaller kit would work. But man, oh man, does that look so much better. It's amazing. Anyways, that is going to end this video. I gotta get all this wiring wrapped up. It's all off in the corner, but whatever. I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. Until the next one.